Good evening, good night, and welcome to Mindful Live 310. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 15th of the 11th, 2023, the 15th of November. Halfway through the second to last day of the second to last month of the year already. Good night, Ronnie. Good night, Super X. Good night, TikTok King. The Bible supports slavery. Okay. Edroy Glasgow. It's strange. Many people say the Bible supports slavery from certain verses that give instructions to slaves. But it's interesting that from that same Bible, a whole movement of people got an abolitionist idea. That seems strange to me. Something seems afoot there. Maybe you don't understand totally, or they didn't understand totally, and they just assumed an abolitionist view from out of that book. I wonder what could have given them that idea, and why the idea generally didn't pop up other places. But that's not what we're dealing with this evening. That's not the topic at least not the topic we're starting talking about. We're jumping over to our sister isle, Tobago. There was some bacchanal coming out of Tobago. You know, our sister isle regularly makes some contention in discussion. And we talk at length sometimes about ways to bolster the profit-making ability of Tobago. Hey, RL, just the right man at the right moment to speak about the sister isle. $65 for a bacon sausage. Allegedly, RL told us. But yes, we speak about how to make more money for our sister isle. The sister isle, one of the struggles is that they run a serious deficit budget. And they want more. The sister isle would like more money to spend, but they don't make that much. So one of the very important things over there in that sister isle would obviously be ways and measures with which to increase their revenue. And one of the key revenues over in Tobago is tourism. So things that affect tourism, you should be paying keen interest to. And let's look at a tourism story coming out there from Tobago. Tobago Maxi drivers, cruise line agent Charles Cavallo tells Tobago Maxi drivers cannot tell cruise ships when to berth. Allow Tobago to borrow their money like a regular state. Bro. If your budget is orders of magnitude times bigger than your revenue, and you start to borrow, what you borrowing on, bro? The transportation issue must be addressed in Tobago to deal with the volume of tourists for the cruise ship season, which began this month and runs till April 2024. Cruise line agent Charles Cavallo addressed the issue of internal transportation following the disappointment of 300 tourists on board the inaugural arrival of the Celebrity Silhouette in Scarborough, who had their tours cancelled on Saturday due to the non-arrival of maxi taxis. So, 300 tourists touched down in Tobago on the inaugural visit for this cruise liner. You know, they say you don't get a second chance at making a first impression. So they were making a first impression, and none of the maxis showed up. What? How? What is this? Carvalho told Guardian Media at the launch of the cruise ship season at the cruise ship complex yesterday that following a cruise conference recently held in Mexico, it was reported that the demand for tours by passengers at the various destinations has grown by 50%. So there is a bumper. There's a bumper in the cruise tour industry. A bumper in the cruise tour industry. And at this very moment is when Tobago wanna drop the bag. At the moment when there's a 50% increase in this market, you're marketing yourself as a tourism destination. The chief secretary recently boasted that, you know, they went to London and they were in one of those tourism world conferences business, and, you know, they were among the big guys, you know, they rubbed shoulders with the big guys. Well, the big guys can't be allowing 300 tourists on an inaugural visit to be stranded. We are lacking transportation in Tobago, and one of the issues that was highlighted is that on Saturday and Sunday we have a religious issue with the maxi taxi drivers who will not come out to work, and today you cannot go to promote cruise ship business for Trinidad and Tobago and tell them not to berth on a weekend. It's not a good marketing strategy. So is it that the Sabbath and Sunday morning service is killing all maxi operation in Tobago? You're telling me that all maxi taxi drivers in Tobago are very religious men? Bro, I don't buy. I don't want to draw anyone's religious fervor into question, anyone's righteousness into question. I do not want to draw that into question. But I just have the feeling like on an entire island, you're telling me everyone is either a very serious SDA, or they have one of those Baptist services that start 8 o'clock, and all 2-3 o'clock you're still hearing the drum going. All the maxi taxi drivers are that. Edroy Glasgow says, I see a business investment there. Well, you see, that's some of the strange things that go on in Tobago. It seems like this would be the perfect area for entrepreneurship. Someone in Tobago would say, okay, no maxi taxi wants to work on a weekend. Well, I am going to hire I'm going to get a few non-SDA people to work on Saturday and hire the SDA people to work on Sunday, and I will have my maxis driving up and down through the weekend. John, we fed up talk about this, man. Read a book for once. Michelle, poor planning again. I'm sure people knew it was docking and nobody could have arranged. Well, of course people would have known it was docking. RL, many of the people who say things like that have no idea what they're talking about. They think that oil is, I have oil, so when I want, my government just goes with a wheelbarrow and a shovel and throw it in a wheelbarrow and a shovel, empty it into a barrel, and go in the international oil market with their barrel and rent a stall and sell the oil there. Like, that's how oil business goes on. You know, Tobago severs from Trinidad, and the THA, on the day Tobago severs from Trinidad, they send out an expedition out onto the coast there of Tobago, and they put down a few oil rigs. like that. That's how it would. If the oil was profitable, Exxon would have been there already, you think? Tobago lose all the oil if they separate from Trinidad. Barbados will get all. Well, Barbados may get some, Venezuela may get some. One thing I could nearly assure you is Tobago is not going to be the beneficiary. And extracting oil requires massive investment. Investment that Tobago would not be able to make. And investment that international, multinational companies would have to see a possibility of a return in order to make themselves. So in Guyana, they recently increased the output again. Guyana's output is increasing like by the month. So Exxon is seeing it worthwhile to invest in Guyana. Are they going to invest in Tobago to get 2-3 drops of oil? Yeah, sure. And if we are to look it amazes me. It amazes me. Nick says government needs to take up the responsibility to cater to cruise ships. It amazes me the way people think that they can fail at small things, but if you give them a massive thing, they're going to succeed at that. You know, you give someone a stall with chewing gum, cigarettes, and biscuits to manage at the side of the Maxis stand, and they bust in that. But you know, if you give them a grocery, they will really show you what they're capable of. No. That's not how it works. If somebody is incapable of managing a simple thing, and you give them something more complex, it's just going to be worse. You're telling me that Tobago, who is apparently struggling to get 300 passengers in an inaugural cruise line visit, to be able to be taken to, where would they want to go? Storby, Argyle, a couple of places? That's where many of them want to go? You're telling me that you're unable to logistically manage that, but somehow you're going to logistically manage extracting oil from disputed waters off your coast. And if Tobago separates from Trinidad, people talk about Barbados disputing for the oil, Venezuela disputing for the oil. Listen, if Tobago separate from Trinidad, I as a Trini disputing for the oil too. That is Trini oil. That is not Tobago oil. If we're not together anymore, there's no together we aspire. Trinidad aspiring on our own. You all aspire to see if you can fight Barbados for the flying fish. Or we could all go it together and be stronger as a unit and throw away all this nonsense talk that people poison your minds with. Tobago has very high potential for tourism destination, but needs to get serious. 100% agreed, Nick. That's kind of the point I'm making here. Good night, Paul Duncan. That's kind of the point I'm making here. Tobago has that opportunity. It's like, I remember a while ago reading some one of those business books, and you know, they were talking about one of the most important feats you can accomplish as a business is returning customers and being in business next year. All Tobago basically has to do, like, you don't even need to go to those world tourism festivals and all of that. Anybody who touches the border of Tobago for tourism purposes must have the best time of their life. And that's all Tobago needs to do. That's all Tobago needs. Every person that enters Tobago must have the best time of their life, and that's all you need, because now that person is going to be a return customer and they're going to bring someone back the next time. And the thing is, Tobago doesn't have to fake it. Tobago is actually beautiful. It's actually serene. It's actually a nice, calm place. There are actually historical sites to visit. There are actually bird viewing sites to visit. You know, you don't have to lie about what you have. You actually have the goods there. All you need to do is not fumble the bag. Stop fumbling the ball. When the 300 tourists land on, the maxi taxis are there waiting for them with a smile. Where y'all wanna go, brother? Argyle? Yes, let's go, Argyle, man. That's all. That's all. No fancy thing. You don't need to separate from Trinidad and figure out how you're going to float off an offshore drilling platform to get deep sea oil. You don't have to try to figure out where your new maritime borders are going to be redrawn in case you're going to lose more flying fish to Barbados. None of that. None of that. Make sure the maxi taxis come. Simple, simple things. Make sure the maxi taxis come. Make sure none of the touts on Storby fighting in front of the tourists about glass bottom boots. That's like a bank failing but wanting a bailout. Yeah. Let me see if I could draw the example I might be thinking of here. It's like PTSC. The main aim of PTSC is to transport people from point A to point B. If PTSC buses are never running on time, they're always shutting down like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, PTSC is talking about they're going to expand their fleet into transporting gravel and sand. They're going to buy trucks to enter into the, the aggregate business to deliver gravel and sand all over the country. No, but you're already feeling at this. You don't need to get all complicated and stuff. There's a simple mission for you to succeed at first before we expand. Succeed right there. Hey, Ronnie. What if we independent, all the banks will leave too? Scotia and RBC will not stay here. Lol. You have to wait till 10 a.m. to get the doubles in Tobago, but Trinidad 5:30 a.m. you could get. Nick says, I must say it was a bad decision not accepting sandals. That was a great opportunity. POTUS says those taximen did an injustice to Tobago's economy by simply not showing up. Correct. Correct. And I remember we were speaking about this previously where it could seem like there's a work culture of that in Tobago. And I wonder and suspect, because I've heard this from Tobagonians in this self-same live. I've heard this from Tobagonians in the self-same live that some of the overrepresentation of the THA in the employers market, the THA employs 3/4 of the population basically in Tobago. Because of that, there's a decrease in interest in keenness towards entrepreneurship. Many people are not as keen towards it because they don't need it. You throw some Trinidad and Tobago red band maxi and green band maxi hustlers, like throw main road maxi hustlers over in Tobago with the opportunity to get tourist money. Listen, if that boat is docking 8 a.m., them boys there 5:30 watching the sunrise. Green band, red band, main road maxi hustlers. You know the fellas who will pull their maxi across the whole lane, pile up traffic for a mile backward, just to make sure nobody take them over to get the passengers in front. Because they know if they don't get it, nobody is giving it to them. That's the kind of hustle mentality pushing entrepreneurship. Sandals may have been a good opportunity, but the way the PM went about handling this was disrespectful. You can't do what you want and say to hell with what the citizens want. You know, to be very honest, I don't know enough about the details of that sandal situation. to know exactly how bad or good it was. I do not like the idea of giving up no man's land. I don't like that idea. And when you look at, is it St. Lucia, where someone is basically taking over their main protected hills? There's a lawsuit right now in Jamaica about Blue Basin Bay or something like that. Some of those islands' most well-known landmarks are now under the control of foreign corporations. That's not a good thing. And I would not like for it to have been that Sandals puts an exclusive resort there, and now my generation, the generation of my children, the only time they see the beauty that is no man's land is if they could afford to go to Sandals. And like it's kind of a package with Nylon Pool right there and all of that. I think some of those beautiful areas could be better utilized without having to sell them out. That's my hope. My hope is that we could utilize some of these things without having to sell it out. Now, I understand the temptation to sell it out. And if I'm thinking purely economics, I will say sell out every single thing. Sell it out, everything. Because when you leave our state to run things, very often it runs into the ground. And maybe if we sold out Caribbean Airlines and all of the other state-run companies to international operators and just collected the profit off of it, maybe we as a country would have been able to sit wealthy off of the profits without having to wonder about the corruption in running it. Okay, that might be the case. But my hope is that we don't become plebs, we don't become renters in our country. We don't have foreign corporations buying out our country from underneath us until our 2 generations down the road looking back, there's a whole different kind of arrangement on how Trinidad and Tobago works. I won't like that. The THA apologizes, though. THA apologizes to stranded cruise ship passengers. The Tobago House of Assembly Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation has described as regrettable the cancellation of pre-booked tours for 300 tourists on board the Celebrity Silhouette, the first cruise ship to dock in Tobago for the season. The tour scheduled for last Saturday had to be cancelled because the maxi taxis that had been booked failed to arrive. You know, all of the reading I've done on this, nobody basically says why. Like, why didn't the Maxis show up? Because the tours were pre-booked. The tours were pre-booked. So the maxi taxi drivers were previously okay with working on Saturday or Sunday. And then they found religion in the intervening time. Something about that seems very suspicious. Micah says we saw 2 oil booms and have nothing to show for it. Only the ones at the top seem to benefit. That is not true, Micah R922. Like, okay, we didn't best utilize the oil booms. I may say that. We didn't best utilize it. But to say we have nothing to show for it is being dishonest. We had dog cheap gas, diesel, fuel for a long time. We have free healthcare. We have free education to tertiary. You don't pay to write CXC. It's not the same in every other place. There's pension, a pension grant, and I'm not talking about NS, I'm talking about the old age national pension grant. Many places don't have that. CPEP, URP, MUST, YTEP, MILAT, MIC. The list goes on and on and on and on and on of program after program after program that basically pays people to go to school and learn a skill. So we did see a lot for those two oil booms. Granted, I don't think we saw the best we could have. I think there was a lot of wastage. There was a grand amount of theft. A grand amount of theft without a doubt. But we did see some. We have Carl draining the country. People in Trinidad too complacent. Well, complacency is built on when you have these kind of markets where, you know, things come to you pretty easily. You don't have to hustle for it, so you're complacent about it. If those maxi taxi drivers in Tobago had mortgages on their maxi taxis that they were up to their necks in, and if they miss money, they're missing a payment, I don't think they would have missed that money. I think something is making their business a little easier. I think we need independent bodies from government to hold them accountable for bad decisions. It's difficult to do that. Like Micah R922, independent bodies from government that holds government accountable. Like understanding what that means. Where do these independent bodies come from? Because the thing that gives government the authority to make decisions is that the people vote for them. Do you want a group of people that you do not vote for to have control over the group of people that you do vote for? That's the problem. Or is it that you want to vote in another independent branch you're going to vote in? And then you're talking about kind of like the US system, where you can vote in senators, which is technically an independent branch. You vote in members of Congress, which is technically an independent branch. And you vote in a president, which is also an independent branch. And the three of them independently are supposed to work together. But they're all three voted for. If they are not voted for, you're putting yourself in problems. I don't know if, Michelle, you're saying the UN as in where this independent body comes from. But I do not want the UN to have an independent body dictating policies in my country over the people I vote for. You saw the story of the baby in the UK who the court killed? Yes, I saw that story. But I think it's not only one time that has happened in the UK. It happens. And that's the thing with public healthcare. Public healthcare, the public has to determine where best to spend their money. And some cases they may consider too much of a losing case to spend their money. Problem with public healthcare. That's why I say, like with Made in Canada medical assistance in dying, basically they're killing you, the doctors legally. With something like that in a public healthcare system, that's a nightmare. Because the public healthcare system gets to determine basically if you live or die. If they don't have enough resources to treat your condition, do they now get to recommend death for you? Like, bro, no thanks. No thanks. That sounds too dystopian to me. I'm not saying it's perfect, but we need to try something different. Yeah. I don't disagree, Micah. I don't disagree that something different may be better. State is about control, Ronnie. The state is about control. They need to be able to establish and display control. They need to be able to establish and display control. I say we get two big, nice universities here. Where? In Tobago. That's true, Nick. A lot of what the government pays for is overpriced. I always take in your lives and I get more value from these convos than from parliament debates. Appreciated. Appreciated, bro. Appreciated. All right. Jumping into, I just touched on this yesterday, but I think there's enough in this story to, you know, dive in a bit deeper. Look at a bit of the details of the story. An interesting story for us internet netizens, us who are us internet dwellers, on how you use your words on the people's internet, you know, how you talk about people. Your words have weight on this internet. You don't just say random things. Yes, Ronnie, I find it looks like somebody planned that, and I don't know why they planned it. What end would they get out of that? Who benefits from planning such an insane thing? But yes, Philip, to pay Pandy almost $1 million for defamation. Former Progressive Empowerment Party political leader Philip Edward Alexander has been ordered to pay $850,000 in compensation to Patriotic Front political leader Michaela Pandey for defamation. High Court Judge Devendra Ramprasad ordered the compensation as he upheld Pandey's case against Alexander last Wednesday. The lawsuit was related to a live video which was posted on Alexander's personal Facebook page and one associated with the PEP on July 17, 2020. Alexander commented on Pandey's party reversing its decision to contest the 2020 general election. In his judgment, Justice Ramprasad ruled that Alexander's comments were defamatory. Oh, so is it, Ronnie, that you're alleging some of the drivers are trying to get something out of the THA, so they're trying to do a negotiation move between them and the THA? I wouldn't doubt that. That seems like possibly the most believable thing with that Tobago issue, because I don't see something else as being sensible there. Like, who else would this affect? Besides the THA, this seems like maybe the drivers are trying to get some negotiation done between them and the THA. I don't know. So the video that Mr. Alexander posted, his second, no, it's not his second, Nick, we'll get to that. The video he posted was something alleging that she is attempting to split the votes and alleging she was paid by somebody. And you know, they talk about the 1% and he went down that road. Yeah. And the road had a dead end in it. In his judgment, Justice Ramprasad ruled that his statements were defamatory. He said the court is of the respectful view that the statement was malicious and was designed to sensationalize an obvious untruth that was fabricated for personal political gain and to denigrate and disparage the claimant. Justice Ramprasad also ruled that Alexander's statement did not qualify as responsible journalism as claimed. And listen to this line. If you're trying to do responsible journalism, listen to this line and it might explain to you where the line is drawn between responsible journalism and old talk that could have you $1 million in debt. There was no source of the information that was given in the video, nor did it seem that there were any steps whatsoever taken to verify the information. Very often, that's all it takes. If I can say, well, I am not saying this based on what I mean. I am saying this based on reporting done by the Express on this day, or I'm basing this on a statement from the Prime Minister, or I'm basing this on a statement from the opposition leader. That way, if anybody is to sue me, you can't sue me, you have to sue whoever made the original statement that I'm repeating. The lesson here is don't say unverifiable, unverified things. Like, it's not hard to do that. It's not a difficult thing to avoid. If you do not know something to be true, you have no possibility of verifying it, then do not allege it about someone in public. Last month, Alexander was ordered to pay $525,000 in compensation to Finance Minister Colm Imbert. In 2019, Alexander was ordered to pay $775,000 in compensation to businessman Andrew Gabriel. Micah 922 says it's called platform rhetoric. Politicians usually see what they want and claim this. No, they don't, Micah. Micah, no, they don't. You could get away with platform rhetoric with saying denigrating, insulting, crude, crass things that are not illegal but may raise eyebrows. You can maybe get away with that. But you cannot get away with making an allegation against someone about a lie. You don't do that on political platforms, sir. You don't get away with that. They will sue you, as has been established numerous times. How does that work if you can't pay? Well, if you can't pay, you can't pay. They could seek to foreclose on things that may be on your name, and they may try to contact some kind of debt collection group. But if you don't have the money, you can't get blood out of stone. That's just that. But this guy has been racking up costs. How much them does pay lawyers to sue the people? Let me show you, Reeve. Reeve, let me show you. You could figure it out. Justice Rampersad ordered, this is in the order against Mr. Alexander for Pandy. I'm going to tell you the cost. Justice Rampersad ordered $600,000 in general damages and $250,000 in exemplary damages. His assessment was based on her family's name she inherited from her father, former Prime Minister Bassio Panday, and her unblemished personal reputation as an attorney and politician. Alexander was also ordered to pay $97,750 in legal costs for the lawsuit. So yeah, it's not something that regular small fries do. If you don't have 97,000 to, just throw out in a lawsuit there, tough. Because, I mean, at the end of the ruling, you may get that money ruled to pay off for your lawyers, but that is not an assured thing. You need to have your 97,000 waiting. An interesting story also. Do you want to defame me? No thanks. Good night, Krimak. An interesting story also coming out from all of these hacks coming around. SWRHA battles European hacker to save its system. The SWRHA was hacked earlier this year. Sorry, and they're still in a battle trying to get back control of their system. Trinidad appears to be a ground zero for these hacking attacks. SWRH is still struggling to get back possession of their system. They have to do many things manually because the way this attack worked, they basically locked the SWRH out of their system. Lock them out, and they tell them you have to pay $7 million US to get back access to it. Back to phone book and folders, yes. That's actually what they have to do in the SWRH. The CEO denies it. Well, I think they're communicating about it now. They could have hacked and give us money. Why would they do that? Those hackers aren't they aren't saints. They're not Robin Hood out here trying to share money. They're trying to make money all on their own. They're about themselves. They want to make that paper for themselves about hack and give us. They don't care about us, man. Now, probably one of the most important stories for the night. Very interesting, important story. Trinidad need to get good programmers. Well, I don't actually think so. Because very often, if you see the details of some of these situations, it's not that the country didn't have a good programmer. It's not that if we had a real ace programmer, this was avoidable. Sometimes it's poor internet etiquette. People are opening nonsense they shouldn't open in work emails where they shouldn't open it. Getting a good programmer is not going to avoid that from happening. That's one. Two, it's about oftentimes the seniors seeing it as being important enough to invest in some of these things. Trinidad has programmers. There are programs you could buy to safeguard yourself. There are several programs you could lease. You could license these programs for your networks. But it's convincing the higher ups that it's worth it. Hopefully now, after these series of attacks make all of this public noise, more and more of these senior management would see it as being worth it. Poor corporate IT policies, exactly. It's not that they aren't IT people or they aren't qualified people in Trinidad and Tobago. It's that the management needs to hire them and see it as being important enough. And now, if it's that the management doesn't even need to report it when a hack happens, then do they really need to even hire IT people? Nepotism in hiring IT workers in government posts. Well, Ziza, it isn't only IT workers. It's nepotism in hiring workers in government posts, in workers in general, all workers. A Fortinet firewall device is about 50,000 TT alone. But for a large corporation, that's not that much money. And it may very well be worth it. So, that's where many of these companies are at. It's not that we don't have IT professionals, we don't have programmers, we don't have crack coders here in the country. It's not that. It's a matter of corporate will. The decision makers need to make the decisions to do that. And if the legal framework isn't there to force decisions to be made, well, you're just waiting on those decision makers to see that it affects their bottom line enough. So, well, the CEO of TSTT was fired over some of these actions reportedly. So maybe now you would see some more CEOs starting to shake up and act, okay, well, we need to do something about these kind of security lapses in our cybersecurity, and we're going to push for some more measures to be taken. Maybe now that a CEO has lost her job for it, but if no one faces consequence for it, then there's no incentive to do anything about it. But yes, very important story here. Gonzalez, tea and tech rate increase unlikely this year. You all hear that? Sorry. Gonzalez, tea and tech rate increase unlikely this year. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez said it is very unlikely that electricity rates will be increased this year. He also confirmed that the cabinet is still considering electricity rate increases proposed by the Regulated Industries Commission. The commission last month revealed we know what they revealed. Speaking to reporters after the opening ceremony for a TT Post delivery office and records maintenance facility, he said that the cabinet subcommittee is currently evaluating the RIC's proposals. As minister, my responsibility is to make sure all of the details and all of the information that is required by the cabinet subcommittee is presented to them so that we can make a decision as quickly as possible, he said. But based on the process, I don't anticipate, as I've indicated in a recent interview, that this can happen, meaning the implementation of the rate as approved by the RIC. I don't think that that can happen before the end of 2023. Although the RIC said TNTech will have the ability to decide how it implements the changes, Gonzalez said it was unlikely that changes would be rolled out in a phased basis. They must happen at the same time so that what to check also needed some time because they have to look at their systems and all of their adjustments, internal adjustments would have to be made before, and that's why I'm saying that this certainly cannot be done by the end of 2023. So run your AC this Christmas, people. It may be the last time your bill is as cheap as you get it. Run that dryer, dry all your clothes, keep the house nice and chilly, because come New Year, at some point in time, there's a new number that is going to be shown on that bill. Time to learn to use my fan and bathe in cup and bucket now. Nothing wrong with that. A good cup and bucket bath is nice, you know. Nice bath. If they want international prices, well, pay international wages. Well, isn't that the thing, isn't it? The government should pay international wages, sorry, if they want international prices. But they're willing to charge us international prices while the wages in the country are still at third world level to some extent. How does that figure? How does that work? You know, I'm always looking at the news. As you know, every night we're talking news and stories here. But looking in the news regularly these days, I'm seeing Venezuelans as victims of crime. And very often it seems like they're victims of crime at the hands of their fellow countrymen too. Like, I don't know if we could access these statistics, but I feel like Venezuelan migrants are overrepresented as victims of crime in comparison to their percentage of the current Trinidad and Tobago population. More of them are dying than their relative percentage in the population. They are more at risk, it would seem, or they are in more violent situations. Recently, a body was found in Pinal, and it was recently identified as being a Venezuelan woman. And you know, there are considerations in that. Like, do you know their history? who there, as in Venezuela as a country, or the specific young lady who was murdered? Who there you mean? And when you look at that, the violence that you see within Venezuelan communities, to me that tells a scary thing about Trinidad on a whole and the direction we're headed in. If we have an increasing migrant population and you're already seeing that violence is overrepresented in that population, where does this lead Trinidad? Let's look at a story though, and a judge ruling on a very interesting case on the Venezuelan migrant situation. Very interesting case. Venezuelan mothers lose deportation challenges. 3 Venezuelan women who entered Trinidad and Tobago illegally and each had a child in TT have lost their challenges against their respective deportations. The justice dismissed each woman's constitutional and judicial review claims. He ruled that the Minister of National Security did not act unfairly when issuing the deportation orders, despite the women each having given birth to a child in TT. So Trinidad and Tobago is saying, we don't do anchor babies. The justice in his ruling, he went on, the minister would have to consider the increasing burden on the resources of the state as a consequence of the flight of Venezuelans by the thousands to TT, and whether his actions may have been seen as an opening of the floodgate in which Venezuelan immigrants could obtain the right to stay and live in TT by giving birth to a child of a Trinidadian father while here. Kremak, there are many Americans who are against anchor babies also, and they want to do away with it also. And I don't blame them, because I think it's a bit preposterous. And I think the term that we should get accustomed to in the life, I think it gives perverse incentives. It gives incentives for bad behavior. If you tell desperate women that if they get pregnant by a Trinidadian man, they're going to be able to stay in Trinidad, you're not going to protect Venezuelan and Trinidadian couples who found love and happen to have a child. That's not who you're going to protect. You're going to encourage desperate women to make children by wayward Trinidadian men. That's what you encourage. Ariel says, I have anchor baby. Relax. Bro, I have no control over the US law. Ask the question, Brandon, of course. That one side, Nathan. Yes, it is one side. And the other side, every night you'd ask that question, Brandon. And the other side is that, yes, there would be mothers who unfortunately made a child and they're still getting deported. But the father is a Trini. Can't the father watch the child? And the judge said just that. In this case, the minister would have had to consider that the claimants, of course, had the option of leaving the children in the custody and care of their fathers. Fathers who, on their own evidence, are all stellar providers not only for the Trinidadian minors, but also for the entire families brought to Trinidad. Kremak says, but one of the factors to high crime rate is single parenting. Okay, Kremak, but you have to look at the incentives. So, Which do you think would create more single parent children? Do you think if we encourage desperate Venezuelan women to come over to Trinidad and make a baby by any man who would be willing to impregnate them so that they can stay here, do you think that would make more single babies or single parent babies? Or if we tell Venezuelans, who are we to stand between love? What nonsense you're talking here? We aren't standing between love. What do you mean you can't say that? The judge just said it. It's the law of the land, Kremak. You as an officer, you as a law enforcement officer should understand this. This is not America. This is not America. You could love a man if you want, Kremak. In this here country, you cannot go marry that man. It is not America. And stand between love? What nonsense. What nonsense. You think this reminds me of the woman last night who was talking about the desperate woman who was abused by the former minister, allegedly, who was allegedly abused by the former minister, and saying that, as it were, she looked for it. So you think a desperate woman being told that she could stay in the country that she wants to sneak into if she gets pregnant for a man from that country, you think that's encouraging love? I think you're encouraging abuse. That's what I think you're encouraging. You're encouraging stinking, nasty, dirty Trini men who cannot get a woman to want them in this country because the women in this country know that they're stinking, nasty, and dirty. They're going to get a desperate Venezuelan who only needs but a baby and your citizenship. And would we be better off by allowing these men to impregnate women? Which kind of men do you think would impregnate a desperate migrant? Conveniently, we are not America, but we implementing all their treaties. What? Yeah. Kermack, you don't seem to understand how this works. If you're an ally of the US, you implement their treaties if you want to continue trading with them. That's what that is about. You listen to them to continue trading with them. That doesn't mean you emulate all of their laws. And I do not want to emulate America's anchor baby law. They are struggling with immigration at this moment. They are fighting immigration at this moment. They are unsustainable. They are at unsustainable levels of immigration at this moment. Just because you're desperate for a woman and you can't get a local woman doesn't mean that you should have the ability to impregnate a desperate Venezuelan. I do not understand why law enforcement would argue for the ability to put desperate women in more vulnerable positions. I don't understand that. Because those, by putting them in that position, they are just in a more desperate position. If you tell poor women that if they're pregnant for a university professor, they get to go to the university. Would you put a law like that in place? Imagine this. Imagine this. Where's expensive? Imagine if Harvard had a policy. If you are pregnant by a university professor, you are allowed free entry into Harvard. What do you think that would encourage? What do you think that would encourage, Krimak? Would it not encourage desperate people, desperate women to be placed in vulnerable positions? What do you mean comparing that to an innocent child? You know they're not deporting the child, right? All they are saying is that the child doesn't allow mommy to be able to stay here. The child can stay. The child's daddy is a Trini. The child can stay. Or daddy could go to Venezuela and complete the family and live there. If it's love, you know, it's love. And interestingly, all of these women I'm trying to get to that bit. Right. All of these women, interestingly enough, the women came on varying dates in 2019. They all had other children in Venezuela who also entered Titi illegally before they gave birth to babies here. Rahim said, the judge said they were each put on conditional release but became pregnant in Titi, leading the court to infer that the children were being used as an anchor against deportation and to create a type of residency not known to domestic law. All of these women had children previously in Venezuela. All of these women came into the country illegally. All of these women were placed on conditional release. All of these women, while on conditional release, got pregnant for Trini men. All of these women had their Venezuelan children that they had in Venezuela illegally brought to Trinidad afterwards. Krimak, I realize every day this podcast becoming a one-sided conversation. It is not a difference of opinions. Well, it literally is a one-sided conversation. For the majority of the podcast, it's literally me alone speaking. So, I mean... But if you mean that I don't allow for difference of opinions, I'll say that's not true. If you expect that you can say your difference of opinions and I am supposed to accept your difference of opinions, that's not so. You don't have the right to have a difference of opinion unchallenged. I wouldn't block you. And I do block some people that come speaking rubbish. You have all right to say anything you want in terms of your opinion there. It's just I will challenge your opinion because I find it sounds kind of abusive. I find it sounds like you want to put Venezuelan women in more vulnerable positions so they are at a greater disadvantage from dusty, nasty Trini men. But what happens to the child? Who are you protecting? I think I'm protecting the child. If a woman is willing to have a whole child as part of a migration scheme, an immigration scheme, then maybe that wasn't a good mother in the first place. If the man is a dirty, nasty Trini man who is willing to just go around impregnating women because he get his little chooks there, like, again, let's ask the question. What kind of, yes, I'm not assuming, I'm presuming. I am using the evidence to draw a conclusion. Are you a father, Krimak? If you are a father and your daughter desperately runs to a foreign country and she has a man approach her who wants to impregnate her to give her the opportunity to stay there, what kind of man do you think that will be? The evidence we have is that the woman entered the country illegally. The woman previously had children in Venezuela that they later brought illegally into Trinidad. The women were released on conditional release, and all of them got pregnant for Trini men. Evidence. It's circumstantial. I don't need to throw them in jail. But you know what's the strange thing? Law enforcement is arguing this. And I don't know if you all know what I'm reading this from. I am reading this from an actual court case ruling. This isn't Nathan Springer's random rum shop opinion. This is the ruling of the court of this land. So you aren't out of step. No, I didn't abandon that at all, Reeve. But when people request, I allow them. Of course, I didn't abandon that. This is the court of the land. So it's not like you're out of step with my opinion. You're out of step with the legality of Trinidad and Tobago. In this land, I appreciate that the law says you do not get to sell your insemination to desperate migrant women. Oh, no, I didn't stop. It just had a bit of a pause, but no, it didn't stop. Ronnie says the Venice don't like Alia, they hate Alia. I suppose there may be some Venezuelans who indeed like some Trinis. I don't doubt that. But my problem here isn't the Trini men finding love. Like, personally, I am not against Trini men finding love with a Venezuelan woman, by all means. You marry, I know I have some friends who have married across the language barrier, and more power to you all, brethren. Go do your thing. Fine. If a Venezuelan woman comes here, gets her status fixed, you all happen upon each other in wherever you all happen upon each other, strike up a conversation, you know some Spanish, she knows some English, you all do the Spanglish, and it progresses like relationships progress. You marry the woman and you all live happily ever after. Make your Trini Spanish babies and do your thing. But that's not what the nasty men want. They don't want that. They are legal Venezuelan women. You could go and try your luck. You're trying to tell me the only way you could find love, the only love you could find, is in an illegal migrant who needs your sperm to function as an anchor to stay in the country she desperately wants to stay. That's love. Bro, please, I am so happy the courts threw that out, eh? Christmas coming, I go buy a healthy hamper for some of them to cleanse their nasty self. Nathan, you should really go into politics. I don't actually think the solutions are in politics, to be very honest with you. When they marry a Venny, is bro, sis, tanty, uncle, and the whole fam coming. Ramjan back, like I don't want to generalize over a broad brush like all Venezuelans behave the same, because it's not true. There are different Venezuelans that behave differently, and Venezuelans aren't a monolith. They are like people from anywhere else. They are human beings. However, I have indeed witnessed, and hear the word I am using, witnessed Venezuelan wives living elsewhere and bringing in their husbands afterwards. Amazing things. Kamak asks, who settles more with Venezuelans? You mean in Trinidad? Indo-Trinidadians, yes, that's true. Indians in Trinidad. Yes. Indo-Trinidadians in our country generally settle with Venezuelans more. That's not an untrue thing. It's not a hidden thing. It's a meme. I mean, what's the meme? If Raj has $1,000 in his pocket and he bungs up Maria working in a bar, how much money Raj have in his pocket? You know, you all know the meme. Yes, that. Yes. I admit that that's true. Yes. I don't understand the relevance of that point though. I don't understand the relevance of it in terms of the child, the anchor baby side. I don't understand that. I just don't like the idea of setting people up to put them into more vulnerable positions. And that's what that would do. That's what that would do. I don't think you should incentivize desperate women to have children to attempt to stay here. I am more okay with an anchor marriage than an anchor baby. Like, okay, you want to ensure that your Venezuelan woman you love could stay here? Well, marry her and risk losing half of your wealth to her. Where's my evidence of what? I don't think I made a claim that required evidence there. Where's my evidence of what? That anchor babies put desperate women at risk? You doubt that? I need to know exactly what you're talking about. Maybe you could join and we could talk about that. You doubt that encouraging desperate women to have babies to get an outcome that they want would put them in a more vulnerable position? Of course it puts them in a more vulnerable position. Like, what is even debatable there? I honestly don't understand the debate in that. Like, that is self-evidently true. It's not a statement that requires evidence to prove its veracity. I don't doubt I fully agree. I don't fully agree. I don't understand. It puts them in a more vulnerable position. Are you saying that maybe some migrants would still find a man that loves them in that situation? Yes, that might be true. This man gave you an anchor baby and he really legitimately loves you and wants to spend forever with you. That can happen. But did it still put you in a more vulnerable position? Of course it did. You were in a more vulnerable position. Men love sex. If you make a situation where men could reward desperate women with something they want in exchange for sex, you're going to put the desperate woman in a more vulnerable position. Obviously. And you're going also, as I keep saying, you're also going to filter out the worst dregs of the men in society. Because the average decent man is not going to look for an illegal Venezuelan migrant to make a child with in order to get legal migrant status. Like, this seems the most 1 + 1 = 2 straightforward logical progression to me. The only way I could see anyone disagreeing with this is if you already have your illegal Venezuelan migrant girlfriend and you love them and you're feeling like someone is throwing this directly at you. If we're just talking about the facts of it, this seems plain to me. Society is not about being able to make decisions based upon what they want or need. It's not adding up, okay, Nathan? Also, 90% of Venezuelans who come here didn't have the funds to go Colombia or Panama. So they were desperate, you're basically saying. They were extremely poor. That's a very good point to put in there, RL. That's a very good point to put in there. If you love the girl, marry her. That's what I said, Kevon. Like, you could get me sold an anchor marriage. If all you love each other so much, marry. Risk it. Put real risk down there. And then after you marry, pop out all the babies you want. You could make a football team after you marry, and all will be fully Trinidadian babies. Great for you. You love. If you love so much, marry. Why wouldn't you want to marry if it's love? Like, why would you be willing to impregnate her but not marry her? If it's love. You know, love. Love my rare end. Many people like to play, you know the Trini statement, a favorite statement of mine. Many people like to play smart with stupidness. All I hear speaking about the Venezuelan woman and man, but no one studying the innocent child life. The judge spoke about that too. Parents divorce all the time. In the first place, what kind of parents are you encouraging for children by creating an incentive like this? That's the first place. In the second place, if this is something like Kremak, as an officer, if a woman murders someone but she has a child, do we refuse to send her to prison because we don't want to break up the family? If the woman commits a crime and has a baby, does the baby stop her from going to prison? So then, here's the solution. If as a woman you want to do a crime, you go murder somebody, and then you find a man and get pregnant. It's like the get out of jail free card. Really? Does that make sense to you? Because, you know, the child, we have to think about the child. We have to do whatever we must do to keep the family together. So we cannot throw anyone in prison. How dare we throw the mothers in prison? And you know what's ridiculous about this? You have Trini men who are fathers. Probably the majority of men in remand are fathers. And you're holding them there normal for 15 years. But somehow, it's too preposterous to even think about returning the Venezuelan woman to her home. You're not throwing her in prison. Mr. Trini could go to Venezuela. You ain't break up the family, you know. If Mr. Trini so love, he will go to Venezuela. How is that comparison off, Krimak? The woman broke the law and then got pregnant after breaking the law. How is that comparison off? I don't understand. You broke the law and then got pregnant. And somehow the child is supposed to absolve you of the consequences of break the law. Krimak, I summarized what I said. I said way more than that, saying the same thing. Queen of the Wheel, I've heard of that problem, Queen of the Wheel. I've heard of that problem where some people rent one person and then they blink and spin 2 times and recognize there are 10 people living in their apartment. So yes, I've heard about that. And I mean, like on all sides, I don't blame Venezuelan people. I don't blame the Venezuelan even the illegal migrants. I don't blame them for wanting to come here illegally. If Venezuela is so bad and Trinidad is better, you'd risk it. You'd risk it even though it's illegal to attempt to come here. But at the same time, I don't blame Trinidad for saying it's unsustainable to take everybody who is in a sad situation. I don't blame anybody for it. I understand the incentives that caused it. But that's kind of inconsequential when we're talking about how do we conclude the whole matter. And even in the states where they allow anchor babies, very often if they catch you, they will post you back while pregnant. Because, like, the idea of an anchor baby was not supposed to be what it became. The idea was if you happen to be here and you had a baby, well, we will see about that child. The idea wasn't that you're going to scheme in order to pull that off. Krimak, I don't know if it's the same one you're talking about. I know of a situation here. The Nigerian man had 3 children and he was posted back. I know of that situation. And the thing is, that man lived here for like a decade. For like a decade. Strange stuff. And for me, that's what I said. Marriage is a different thing. You could get me to believe in anchor marriage. Because at least we're seeing that these people are going to try to build a stable building block for society. But that's not what anchor babies encourage. Like, provide the incentive that if you're married and make a baby, you'll be a citizen. Great. I am okay with that. Not just make a baby. That's not a good incentive to put out there. You don't want that incentive out there. You don't want illegal migrants incentivized to make babies by shady characters, because that is the incentive that you're creating by allowing such a thing. As it should, Kuvon, as it should. And I mean, I believe you won't risk being posted back, generally speaking. Have contract marriage out there, yes, I know. But contract marriages are generally a lot more difficult than contract. Well, you don't even have contracts for the babies oftentimes. Like, if you're willing to risk living together with someone for 7 years, building a stable home just for them to get a residency, then cool, risk it, fine. Give the country 7 years of good family life each time. I'm willing to risk that. If you're telling me it's that versus babies and they stay, any day give me 7 years of marriage, then by all means, you're a Trini too. The truth be told, in its present state, who the hell want to live in TNT? I don't think you're serious. If you're asking that Leoline Bastien, I don't think you're serious. There are many people who want to live in Trinidad, and Trinidad isn't even on the negative half of worst places to live in the world. Not even in the negative half. I assure you, if you are given the opportunity to live between Trinidad and 90% of the other countries in the world, you would live in Trinidad. I'm telling you. You'd live in Trinidad. Venezuelans who know what it's like to live in Venezuela prefer to leave Venezuela and come and live in a cane field in Trinidad in a shack than live in Venezuela. RL people feel the entire of the world is New York. They feel the entire of the world is New York. And you know, Trinidad is an S-hole country. And everywhere else is so much better. But you see, Trinidad, we just so, ew, how you can love Trinidad, ew. Everywhere else is better than Trinidad. And why everybody leaving Trinidad for better? Who is everybody? Who is everybody that leaves Trinidad for better? I don't know that to be true. I'm a US citizen 32 years now. I'm going to Dubai. Grand. Go live in Dubai. Go live in Dubai by all means. How much is your credit card bill? It doesn't even make sense going through those discussions, especially in something like this, because somebody could say anything in it. This person could be messaging from their boss's Wi-Fi while they sit in the basement doing the night's chores. So, I mean, who knows? You could say anything online. But there are many ways to look and see comparatively how bad certain places are. There are many ways to evaluate that. It's not total guesswork. But Leoline, live it up in Dubai by all means. Brandon, I feel I know the question. Kevin says I prefer go to Tobago than Dubai. Me too, personally. Dubai is a visit, but to live? I don't hate any player or any game. I hate neither the player nor the game. If you are a player and you're playing your game, more power to you. Play that game, bro. Less stress there. I guess once if you're a millionaire, that might be true. Trinidad Dubai is either for tourists or very wealthy people. Anyway, people, It has been nice. I'm looking to dive out there. Are there any further questions or comments in live? The Jamaicans looking to come Trinidad and the Trinis looking to go Canada. Trinis could go Canada if they want. I've spoken to some Trinis who have their dreams set on Canada. Very regularly when I talk to people, like I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. Like, if you think your best decision is to leave Trinidad, that might indeed be true. I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. It might be true. But very regularly, I ask people when they say things like that, I ask them if they know things about the countries they're going to. Like, okay, you think this is bad in Trinidad. Do you know what is happening in that country you're going to? What are you willing to put up with? And I mean, if you want to compare countries that are like 50 times the age and 100 times the size of Trinidad to Trinidad, well, obviously you would see differences there. And if that's what you prefer, again, you have the freedom to do so. But it's not the same thing. Which is better? I don't know. It's according to what you want. Going to the US or Canada, it's according to what you want. I personally, I am much more in line with freedom-oriented thinking. So for me, the US seems like a better option because the US has states where, you know, you could choose to go to a more free state. Like I always say, if I were to go to the United States, send me to what they might consider the most racist state, where everybody got their own guns and mind their own business. Strange enough, those have the lower murder rates. But yeah, I'll be more okay with more of that freedom. Beetham is better than Silat, Paul Duncan says. I don't know. Like, how does one judge that? If you want to work 3 times harder, leave and go. Texas is good. Good according to who? Good according to what? Good according to what you're looking for, I guess. What's the joke, Ronnie? What's the joke? Before I run away. In case I don't make it to the morning. What you mean by that, Ronnie? See, let's need to run another boxing event. Reeve, you go down see let's to watch boxing, bro. You go down see let's to watch boxing. What I just read there, Ronnie? Ronnie, what? So, Ronnie, what you doing on your friend bed? What were you doing on your friend? And is fake sleeping a euphemism? Are we using euphemistic language here, Ronnie? You were on your friend's bed, fake sleeping? Oh. So what? I don't even know if I should ask this. Look at the direction this live going. So should I even ask this question? So what you were doing before you were fake You know what, YouTube? YouTube, have a good night. YouTube, I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained. This was the Mindful Live. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Good night, YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button if you're still viewing and you haven't hit that like button yet. Make sure you hit that like button and drop a comment if you have something to say. Good night. Enjoy.